Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing a very powerful Pokemon that has climbed back to meta status this season, and that is Pangoro. In a season where so many Psywave users are now running around everywhere, and a lot of strong Pokemon that are weak to fighting, like Credilli, just entered the meta, Pangoro finds itself very well positioned to core break many teams to smithereens. So today, I'm pairing it up with a Shadow Drapion and a Shadow Lapras, and I went 12-3 across the 3 sets that I ran with it for this video. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's take a look at Pangoro in action. And Pangoro's off to a great start in battle number 1, leading into Malamar. This is a very favorable lead for Pangoro. Pangoro has the same pacing as Malamar, but wins the CMP tie, and in close combat, after a few karate chops, will easily pick up the one-hit KO. So I'm just never going to bait here as Pangoro, going straight for the close combat. That's going to connect, and down goes Malamar. I have a ton of energy. Opponent now going to send in Diggersby. How is this their best response to a Pangoro? Pangoro close combat, devastating damage, and my opponent is in such a tough position now as Pangoro is completely running away with this game. They're going to pivot out and their final Pokemon is revealed to be Credilli, so they were just completely triple weak to the Panda Bear. Surf is going to connect onto Credilli, and I'm more than happy to no-shield. They have to Grass Knot if they want to try and pick up the KO here. They do actually go for the Grass Knot, but even then it still isn't enough. Also, an important note, I was accidentally running Surf for all of these battles. Sparkling Aria is a lot better, and I didn't realize till after I did all these battles that I was running Surf, which is a Sparkling Aria but 5 less damage. So if you run this team, run Sparkling Aria. Do not make the same mistake that I made. We pick up a great lead in the next match, leading into a Jellicent, and Pangoro's going to do amazingly here. The fact that they're staying in is a very good sign, and you know what else is a very good sign? Getting a Night Slash boost right off the bat. We tank that Surf very comfortably, and now I'm firing off Night Slash number 2. This Night Slash is going to pick up the KO. Down goes Jellicent, out comes Fortress, and if this is their best response, then they just don't have a good response to Pangoro on their team. I get to fire off the boosted Night Slash. They end up calling that it's not a close combat, which is a pretty nice call by them. And I'm able to make one final charge attack and force a shield. So Pangoro by itself again KOing almost 2 full Pokemon. Granted, Pangoro as a Pokemon is always going to have its counters. It's not going to like fairy types. Other fighters can be a bit difficult. But my goodness, there are so many teams running around with absolutely zero respect for this Mon whatsoever. In this instance, I'm just going to let Shadow Lapras close out this game, so I'm going to let it through. In the back is Morpeko, and here, Morpeko is going to outpace and make it to an Aura Wheel, but I know that I can guaranteed pick up the knockout with the Skull Bash. So I'm going to farm all the way up to the Skull Bash. Skull Bash will very easily KO, and Fortress is just too low. It's not getting to another move, so I can just Psywave down the Fortress and take the win, and yet another team triple weak to Pangoro. This is a core breaker leading into Charjabug, but oftentimes I like switching in my one counter because it gives the appearance that I'm strong to it. So my opponent may think twice about switching out and saving the Charjabug if they think that I have a really good check to it in the back, when in reality I'm ABA weak. So I'm going to land the Crunch, they land the X-Scissor, and now I get to go for the Aqua Tail. Whether this lands or not, getting this move is really nice. They end up shielding, and then they can farm me down, but they make a crucial mistake. They could have committed to a farm down there, but didn't. Instead, they must have misremembered the energy on the Drapion and threw a move when they didn't have to. My plan was, if they got the farm down, I was just going to send in Pangoro, fully throw it away, and then just 2-shield Lapras. But now that they threw, I can get a big energy lead on Lapras, which is quite nice. So I bank some energy, send in Pangoro. It's a Snarl Mandibuzz in the back, and Pangoro is in a great position against my opponent's backline. Aerial Ace will connect, but with Snarl, they can never realistically ever farm me down. So I get to fire off close combat number 1. That's going to connect and now make it to close combat number 2. This close combat is going to KO the Mandibuzz. Back in comes Blastoise, and I build up to the close combat and I'm going for the bait. Whether they shield or not, just getting damage here is quite nice. I'm now going to switch into Lapras. I make it to the Skull Bash. Unfortunately, I do lose the CMP tie, so my opponent will get the Skull Bash up first, but even so, I'm still in a winning position because I get to get my Skull Bash up, and this is just going to do way too much damage to my opponent. They're going to make one final charge attack here, but it's not going to matter because now that I've buffed my defense, I tank their Skull Bash and get the farm down. Pangoro versus Drapion, a non-Shadow Drapion. This is a very good lead for Pangoro. When I did play this team for 2 games on stream, I actually had a Drapion no shield in close combat. Well, it should have been in close combat. I ended up going for a bait, and it completely threw off my game because I was very used to people just shielding here because they kind of have to. The close combat is way too threatening. Like in this instance, my opponent is going to commit the shield, and now I continue to farm, and I'm going for another close combat. I didn't want to go for another CMP tie because I don't like to be predictable when I throw my charge moves. My opponent is going to double shield, and they make a grave error trying to commit to a farm down that will not happen. Another close combat is reached, and they get KO'd. They send in an Umbreon, so this is very clearly just another team that is absolutely core broken to smithereens by Pangoro. Umbreon banks a ton of energy. In comes Mandibuzz, and it's a Snarl Mandibuzz, so they were again just triple weak to Pangoro. Mandibuzz is going to be going for a Dark Pulse, and with Lapras, I'm going to try and get to the Skull Bash, and I'm able to get there. That is quite nice. Skull Bash, going to start ramping up my defense, making it harder for the Mandibuzz to remove Lapras from the field of play. I do think that Shadow or regular Lapras can work. I believe I mentioned earlier, but the only reason I'm running the Shadow is because my Shadow already has Skull Bash. And here, I'm pretty confident that they're going to try and combo me if I shield. So I just switch, and now I get a guaranteed catch of a Foul Play, which is pretty nice, because I want them to throw energy inefficiently, and throwing a Foul Play onto a Drapion is pretty inefficient. Umbreon, I'm a bit surprised to see. I haven't seen much of it this meta whatsoever, but I can tank a Last Resort no problem. But it looks like they're actually a double Dark Umbreon. Now, this is not a moveset that I would recommend in this meta. I think that Dark types as a whole are pretty strong with the Psywave users, but I don't think Umbreon is it. I think Guzzlord or Pangoro are quite a bit stronger, at least in these first few days of the season. Here, I'm able to play to a CMP tie, and now I'm just in a completely winning position because I still have Lapras, and I have a move loaded on my Drapion. So the Surf is going to put them into very comfortable Aqua Tail range. My opponent is going to be forced to throw. Nice counting by them, but unfortunately, with the Aqua Tail loaded, it is a checkmate situation. Drapion, Aqua Tail will easily KO the Mandibuzz, and all they have left is going to be 1 HP of Umbreon, which we can easily farm down. Pangoro on the lead, Shadow Drapion. Another pretty nice lead for the Pangoro. The thing that I do have to watch for, of course, is a potential catch attempt. The previous Drapion didn't actually go for it, but it is something that I do want to be cautious of, so I'm going to farm up. There's the catch attempt onto Grumpig. I'm able to hold on to the energy, bank it for later, and send in my Drapion. Drapion is going to do very well here. Dynamic Punch connects. That's massive damage. Drapion farming up and firing off the Crunch. Drapion does have a pacing advantage here. The Crunch is going to be shielded, but I make another move, and now they're in trouble. They cannot Psywave down before I make a third. They just let it go, and I win switch and shield advantage. So shielding that proves to be a massive misplay from my opponent. But I'm up a shield. I still have all the energy on the Pangoro, so I'm in a very nice spot. I can bring back in the Pangoro, back-to-back close combats loaded up and ready to go. Goodbye, Drapion. And they're going to have their own Lapras in the back. I switch out to reset the debuff, but at this point, there is no way for my opponent to win. I have a Lapras that's up a shield in the mirror. I have Skull Bash, and I also still have Pangoro. My opponent calls it, as that's their only hope, is that for some reason I don't have Skull Bash, but I do. And now I can just close out the game very comfortably. Opponent is going to make a last second charge attack. They're still playing it out. I am going to save my shields for the next game and take the 2 shield flex. Pangoro, Talonflame, bad lead, but I have 2 Talonflame answers in the back. I'm going to save switch into Shadow Drapion, and the key here is if you switch instantly, you can throw your Aqua Tail instantly, and it's on perfect timing. It's on turn 9, whereas they're finishing turn 10 of their second Incinerate. Now, Drapion, I believe, does actually only win the 2s here because an Aqua Tail does not KO, but I'm very comfortable playing this out if my opponent wants to do just that. And if they shield here, I know that they are going to be pivoting out of here eventually because they know that there is no way for them to win the 2 shield by just firing off flies. So they are going to go for another fly. There's the switch out into a Azumarill. That's not something I was expecting to see, but I can bank a ton of energy on the Drapion, send in the Shadow Lapras. Lapras is behind on energy, so my opponent will get to connect with a player up before I get a Skull Bash up. And since this is the Shadow Lapras, and it's not the greatest IVs, that does do a ton of damage. Now I get to go for the Skull Bash, and look at the damage. Oh my goodness. Azumarill getting absolutely shredded. Azumarill Play Rough is going to connect. I'm just going to keep farming. They send in Talonflame. And honestly, I think they were a lot better off just staying in with the Azumarill and forcing me to throw, because now they lose so much health in the Talonflame in exchange for saving a tiny little bit of health on the Azumarill. Azumarill will get the farm down, but they don't get this energy. I have a move on Drapion. They were prioritizing a move on Azumarill to potentially KO Pangoro, but with the energy that I saved on the Drapion, I'm fine here. In the back is Superior, and I have a guaranteed win condition in this match, and that's by just landing a close combat. I'm not in Frenzy Plant range yet. Once I land the close combat, they can KO me, but I made sure that I was in a spot where I was only one off of a crunch, and they don't have enough residual energy to get there. If they tried to overfarm enough to where they would leave with a charge attack loaded, they would be low enough that I could just Aqua Tail, which I had banked, and take the win. Dream lead Pangoro into a Alolan Saiyan Slash. Opponent safe switches into Emolga. I'm going to bank a Night Slash and send in Shadow Drapion. Emolga, I haven't really played against. I am going to let this go. Acrobatics. I get one shot. What? Oh my goodness. It all goes wrong in a split second. That damage output is insane. I know Emolga's glassy, but I was expecting my Shadow Drapion to survive. The fact that it didn't is, oh my goodness, I am at a loss. I close combat because it does a lot more, but it still does not KO. My opponent makes it to another move, and I am in trouble. This Emolga got so much value. In comes a Sableye, and they were ABA weak to Pangoro. That hurts so much. But my opponent played it perfectly. They switched in their one counter, and their counter was able to get such an advantage against my team that now I'm probably going to lose this game. Shadow Sableye is going to fire off energy here. Sableye goes for the foul play. Foul play will not KO. Lapras gets to another Surf, and the pressure continues to rise on my opponent. They're going to shield. Now, will they switch? Or will they stay? I say they stay. I click the Night Slash, and this game will come down to a catch. I'm predicting they're going to switch, so I'm not going to throw the close combat right away. I'm going to throw one after, and they read me like a book. What a game from my opponent. My goodness. It feels like it's been a while since I got outplayed that severely, but wow, that was brilliantly played by them. Bad lead in the next match, leading Pangoro into Azumarill. I'm going to save switch into Shadow Drapion. Azumarill, I'm very surprised to see, because Azumarill really gets bullied by a lot of the new meta water types like Blastoise and Lapras. It just can't really hold its own. I'm very comfortable letting this go, but the Azumarill's already in a health range where I can pretty comfortably KO it with a shielded Pangoro later in the match. So I should be in a pretty okay spot. Crunch is going to land, opponent sends in their own Drapion, and I should now be in a winning position as long as I send in Lapras, because they should be weak to Pangoro in the back, but I make the wrong read. I bring in Pangoro, and that's a huge error. If I bring in Lapras, Lapras is very comfortably tanking multiple moves. And then I have a Pangoro with 2 shields that will easily get rid of the Azumarill, and they're probably going to be weak to me in the back. So this is really not great. I try and overfarm as much as possible here because I do want to exit with energy. The Azumarill is low enough that I think I can knock them out with a close combat, so I'm going to farm up as much as I can and play to the CMP tie. Close combat into Azumarill is going to be shielded. I'm just going to let this go, and I need Shadow Lapras to close out this game. In comes Shadow Lapras. In the back is Morpeko. No. Oh, this is really unfortunate. And Morpeko, I just had a free win if I put the Lapras on the Drapion, but unfortunately, I didn't make the right read, and now this is going to come down to a catch. I think they're not going to throw right away, so I'm going to overfarm here. I farm to the move, I switch, and they kept farming. They would have let me throw the move and win the game, but they predicted that I'd switch. I switch, and man, it really feels like the losses that I had with this team, if I played cleaner, they could have been wins. And I think that's a pretty good sign for the team as a whole, showing that the team does have quite a bit of play. Here, Pangoro into Claydol. The fact that they're staying in means they're very, very weak to Pangoro. Claydol can put up a pretty solid fight here. Claydol, of course, going to spam out Rock Tombs, farming up a ton of energy with Pangoro. They're going to switch into Jumpluff, and here I respond with Shadow Lapras. It might feel a bit weird to send Lapras into the Jumpluff instead of the Drapion, but I'm expecting this is a bait out considering they have a Mud Slapper lead. After shielding their first move, I'm going for the Skull Bash. Let's ramp up our defense. Skull Bash into the Jumpluff does get shielded. And now that my defense is boosted, I'll take an Energy Ball pretty comfortably. So my opponent will go for the Energy Ball. I tank that no problem. They're going to need another Energy Ball because an Aerial Ace, I can actually survive here. So they will go for the Aerial Ace. That's not going to be enough to KO. They attempt to snipe with the Claydol, but I'm able to react in time. And this will easily pick up the knockout. So down goes Claydol. Back in comes Jumpluff. Jumpluff does exit with energy, but now I can send in the Shadow Drapion. And I'm expecting Shadow Drapion will have value in the back based on how they played. I also do have a close combat banked on the Pangoro, so even if my read is wrong, I should be in a pretty okay position. Crunch is going to pick up the KO. It's a Guzzlord in the back. Drapion can't do anything, but Pangoro absolutely can. We get to switch into the close combat. That's going to be good night to the Guzzlord, and that's a good game. Hopping to the final match, Pangoro against Credilli. Great lead for Pangoro. Opponent safe switches into Charjabug, and I'm going to respond with Shadow Drapion. My goal here is basically, if I can keep switch, I would love to. But if I can't, then I just want to get an energy advantage on Lapras, as Lapras, if it's up even one turn, will be able to have a nice pacing advantage over the Credilli. So my opponent is going to fire off the X-Scissor here due to this 3-2 pacing. I'm going to shield up, and now they're in a position where if they want switch, they're going to have to go down a shield to do so. And that's pretty okay by me. They decide that they're actually just going to let it go. They're going to bring in Credilli, and now I get to fire off a Crunch. Crunch will do some pretty solid damage. Of course, no debuffs applied just yet. I actually get a Crunch debuff, and I make one final Aqua Tail. This Aqua Tail would put them dangerously low due to the debuff, and now I can send in Pangoro. Pangoro, Grass Knot, I know that I can survive it. It will do a lot of damage, though. In the back is a Whiscash. That's not what I was expecting to see at all. Whiscash, it's an interesting pick. I don't think it's the greatest in this meta. All it's going to do now is just give a beautiful, perfect farm down to Shadow Lapras. Shadow Lapras is not going to care about double Mud Bomb whatsoever. Opponent, after throwing this next Mud Bomb, they've got to realize they cannot pressure a shield away from the Lapras. Lapras is going to get a full farm down, so they will resign the match. If you're looking for a strong, try-hard team as we push towards rank 20 and ELO reveals, I think this is a very, very solid one. Pangoro on its own, we saw multiple times, basically KOing 2/3 of an opponent's team and taking shields down with it as it went. So a lot of teams just not really factoring in the fact that Pangoro is a Pokemon, and Pangoro can be really good at punishing those styles of teams. When it comes to the weaknesses of this team, I think this team is a bit soft to flyers that have quick flying damage. Like Jumpluff is a little bit uncomfortable. I would say Emolga is definitely worse for this team than Jumpluff, because Jumpluff, at the very least, against Drapion or Lapras, you feel pretty okay, but Emolga's energy kind of goes everywhere. So if Emolga tends to pick up quite a bit, then that's something that this team does struggle a little bit with. But other than that, I feel like the team works pretty nicely. Unless you see like a Rogue Annihilate or something, I think that this team, these Pokemon, they cover each other's weaknesses very nicely and can put you on the path to success. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, please consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.